When you put your house on the market, usually if you hire a realtor, the realtor will put the property on the multiple listing service, which is also known as the MLS. So why that's important is because the MLS will give you the most visibility. And what that does is once your listing is registered in the MLS, it will be syndicated to all the real estate sites such as Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, Realtor.com, all the other sites. Another huge factor is pricing. So if you price your property correctly, it's most likely going to perform better. So it's hard to know sometimes really like what's the best way to price, because people reference Zillow or Redfin and say, oh, my price is hit this, but really the agent has to go in the MLS and really look at what's happening in your niche neighborhood and compare homes that are just as very very close to what your property is. Now, if there's some areas that are still a seller's market. There's some areas that are more a buyer's market, and some areas that are both. So both buyer and seller. It's not really heavy on each side, but also that depends on the location and the property type. So what is huge is making sure you don't. Pricing is very important. So meaning don't overprice your listing, because that could keep your listing from selling and make it stale. So what happens is if you price too high, it's going to get stale and you're going to wonder what's happening, what's going on, why is my realtor not selling my property? That's not the case. It's because it's priced too high. And you really have to look at what's happening in the neighborhood, like what's the market trends and what are other listings doing that's giving them successful sales. Some areas are price transparent, meaning transparent pricing is if the list price is at X amount, they're looking to sell around that price because that's what they're expecting. So the trend in that area is selling at what it's listed at. And some places are still getting some really great results of listing low to generate multiple offers. Some areas that will work really good, and if that's not really the trend in some areas, that might not do well. So really understanding the pulse of the market is very, very important. Also, another factor is, do you get inspections prior to selling? I always say yes. I think my recommendation is I always think that it's always important to get inspections prior to listing your property, because once you negotiate, you want to make sure that the buyer has looked at all the disclosures, looked at all the reports, and there's going to be minimal there's the chances of them negotiating on price and terms and repairs is going to be minimal because they already put an offer based on what they know the property is. Now people go, isn't that what the seller does? I mean, the buyer doesn't. Shouldn't the buyer pay for their inspections? They could, but if you want to play the game of waiting and seeing if the buyers come back to you 10 days after they do their inspections and say, hey, I discovered these things, I would like this credit back, or I want to negotiate on price. I think that's reactive. I don't really like to put my sellers in that position, because I think that if you could know everything up front, even if you pay I don't know, let's just say the average is $1,500 for inspections. And if you pay that up front, it gives you the peace of mind and negotiating power up front. And whoever does whoever does submit an offer are giving better offers because they know the condition of the property. So people aren't really going in blindly. I would say those are really big factors when selling a property. And also, although the market is still kind of weird in some ways, doing repairs. I think repairs really, really make people feel that the home is in good condition. Although people say, oh, I could do property fixes. I watch HGTV all the time. I can do this and that. But when it actually comes to it, a lot of people get overwhelmed and they don't think they have the resources or the money to actually do the repair. So a lot of times they'll just back off and say, no, I'm not, that property is just too much for me, or oh, that fungus damage or dry rot is just way too much for me. I don't want to have to deal with it. So different things will scare different people. So I think from my experience, those are some factors just to really consider. So when it comes to visibility, where is your listing placed at? Pricing is huge as far as how that plays into your sale. And inspections. Do you get inspections prior to selling, and do you know the condition of your home, so then you can market it correctly and not scare any buyers? So those are some tips that I would say to help navigate a tricky market. Hopefully this is helpful for you, and I hope you have an amazing season.